Get to the next exercise in only 20 minutes.
Challenge and come up with a couple of pathways. Okay, and basically what a pathway is in its essence a theme. So it's a theme for coming up with different actual intervention strategies that you're going to come up with and propose at the end of the day. Okay? And so we wanted to give an example of what it means, right? What does it mean to come up with a pathway? And so this is an example of a challenge that we actually worked on with the Rockefeller Foundation, which was all about small-scale fisheries. And so we were asking, how can we actually build the capacity, the resilience of small-scale fisheries and improve the lives of vulnerable people who depend on them? So as many of you know, many of the small-scale coastal fisheries are in trouble. And fishers are relying on small-scale fisheries as one of their only sources of livelihood and income. Okay? And 30 to 50 years from now, small-scale fisheries might not exist unless we actually address some of the key issues going on. And so Rockefeller is saying, you know, let's not just look at the system, but let's also look at the lives of the people, the fishers out there, and think about how we can actually create a better world for them. And so we took basically that issue and said, okay, what are some of the target outcome areas that we actually want to start looking at? And we picked out 5 key areas: human welfare and equity, economy, resilience, food security, and the future of fish. And we said, given this challenge, what can we do? And so we got together 30 experts, very similar to what we're doing here, back in December at Stanford, and had them go through a similar process of what you're doing right now and say, what are the key issues that are happening? You know, who are the stakeholders out there that are influencing this issue? How can we think about what's driving the key issues, right? Similar to how you asked why in one of the previous tools. And through that entire process and synthesizing all the information, we came up with a collection of what we're calling pathways, okay? And so some of the pathways, just to read these out, are, you know, number 1, how can we develop alternative employment options within small-scale fisheries communities? How can we develop financial innovations for the fisheries socio-ecosystem? So how can we deal with comprehensive data collection and transparency? One of the biggest key issues out there was that fishers can't actually get the right price for their fish. Right, and part of the problem there is that there isn't actually a market. What is the value of fish, and how do you actually track it down the value chain? Pathway number 4 is building adaptive capacity to enable effective resource governance. So basically, at the end of the day, is what this is saying is you have a challenge, right, and you're moving from the intentionality of trying to solve that challenge down to a very tangible action, which would be an intervention, a program, a strategy, a product, an experience, right? And so at the end of today, you're basically going to be at a point where you have a set of very powerful pathways that you can present for each of the RI labs and for the challenges that you're working on. And beyond today, you'll be saying, okay, how do we actually take those pathways, come up with strategies that are more specific, and then come up with actual solutions that we can go out there and start to pilot. So any questions about this? It's, you know, kind of hard to think through for the first time. Yeah. So the pathway.
Can I interject?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. A pathway is, let's say you have a large complex issue, such as resilience of subsistence farmers, to all sorts of issues, including, you know, climate change and water security, etc. Let's say you take one problem. Let's say AIDS, right? The number of things you can do in order to really change the AIDS issue are many, right? You can have something that has to do with drug delivery, something else that has to do with community capacity, something else that might have to do with behavior change, a fourth one that might have to be about leveraging volunteer networks in very many different ways. They're different thematic approaches. Each of them will lead to a different strategy and a different action plan. And they might have cross But something about data is somewhat different from a capacity building that has to do with working with communities. So they are different teams, different categories, each of them is a pathway.
And to build on that also, would have a different opinion and experience with that particular issue. And so from there we could say, okay, what are the different ways of actually doing organic learning, and come up with a set of themes amongst all of us, and then create challenges around those, right? So we're essentially coming up with those thematic buckets, so to speak, and they're not solutions. They're basically just lines of thought or trains of thought that you can use to move forward and create solutions against. If that makes sense. Yeah? Okay. So you have a tool in front of you that looks like this. Okay? And what we want you to do, and this is after, of course, you finish the systems one, is to basically say, it's an individual exercise, and we want you to think, okay, based on the key issues that we've talked about, based on the changes we want to see, based on the outcomes we want to see, what are some of these thematic buckets? And for each sheet, you're creating a thematic bucket. Okay? So with each sheet, we want you to say, okay, what would be the title of this pathway? How would I summarize it in one sentence or less? What would be the description of this pathway? So how